Welcome back, folks, to our pandemic COVID-19 crisis leadership series on the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. On today's show, we have Margaret Wong from McWong International. But before we get to that conversation, Greg and I would like to take some time to tell you about the original supporter of this show, Greg, the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors.
That's right, NAILD. That's what brought us together. What brought this show out, and excited to bring this to you guys.
So go to NAILD.org. That's NAILD.org to join our association. But for right now, we're going to talk to Margaret Wong. Hello, Margaret. How are you?
Hello, Michael. Hello.
Good. Nice to see you. Greg, say hi to Greg Ehrich.
Hello, Greg.
Hi, Margaret. I was
Long
going to say
time
hi to
no
myself.
see.
Yeah. Good to see you.
Well, it's, you know what, it feels like a lot longer than it was, Margaret. And so it's been a much different time now than it was when we last met. When did you realize that this COVID-19 crisis was a leadership issue for you at McWong International?
Well, we started to feel the crisis right before Chinese New Year, which is about January 23rd, and a few days before the Chinese New Year, we already got the message about China is in crisis. So on one hand, we already prepared for the Chinese New Year because every year that China is kind of closed down because of the Chinese New Year.
Mhm.
So we're expecting to close down for maybe 10 days.
Mhm.
So but before the Chinese New Year, we realized that this could be more than 10 days.
And when did it occur to you that it was time to do something about your supply chain in China and that there was going to be ongoing issues?
Well, since the Chinese New Year, that this crisis is going on, and we heard a lot from the news. We heard it from our factories, our suppliers, and this is something is going to be extending beyond the Chinese New Year, and then we knew that our supplies will be interrupted at least after 2 weeks after the Chinese New Year. And so it's becoming really the climax towards the beginning of February. And everything kind of shut down, and our factory could not be able to restart. The workers are not allowed to come back, and some of the workers are from out of town, so they have to have all these quarantine so that they just cannot be able to get on to their normal life. And our factory since then has been off for weeks, and it's not just our factory, the whole supply chain, from the shipping logistic, from the components, from the workers, from everything. So it was a nightmare during the month of February for people like ourselves, that we do a lot of procurement from China for our lighting components. Even though we are very ready in the U.S. at that time, because we do some sub-assembly in our own facilities in America, but the whole pipeline has been stopped for many weeks.
How is your factories doing now? Are they back up to fully operational, partially operational? Where are you at in terms of that?
Yeah, the good news is the virus was kind of controlled well, and so the factories basically coming back. Most of our workers are back. There's still some of them are dribbling in, but I think that both of our factories are actually already gearing up and producing products.
Now, those are your lighting factories. How many factories does the McWong Group have in China? I think you said it was 6 or 7, wasn't it, when we went to see you?
Yeah, we have other factories that not related to lighting, but the lighting side is we have 2 factories.
2. Are any of them in Hubei or province or near Wuhan at all?
No, one of our factories is in Shanghai, and the other one is Zhanjiang, which is in Guangdong province. And Shanghai, of course, is being infected, but is not as heavy as in Wuhan.
Mhm.
And Zhanjiang, surprisingly, the infected people are very not much. So we're lucky. The Zhanjiang factory
Mhm.
is much less than Shanghai, and so they're doing okay.
It's this COVID crisis has an interesting thing to it. It seems that some places seem to be much more affected than others. And like New York, for example, parts of Spain, parts of Italy, and then other parts that like Toronto, doesn't seem to be nearly as affected as New York would. And Toronto has a huge Chinese population in it, so it's interesting that different areas of China and then different areas of the United States and Italy seem to be affected differently. When did it become a problem for you in terms of business, and then with your people in the United States, Margaret? When did you realize that?
Well, of course, everybody knows that the virus is starting, had already started gearing up in U.S. and obviously is affecting us from the U.S. side.
Mhm.
And to answer your question, there's a lot of them. Why some cities are more cases than other cities. My guess is number one is the density of the city,
Mm.
and number two is how the government officials is enforcing, the quarantine, how serious this is becoming the city, government to
Mm.
determine. And thirdly is always, I always say the culture and how much the people that in that city would like to abide to the rules.
Hmm.
Some of them are very much, abiding to stay home and don't go anywhere, but some of them may not. I've seen some of these, clips from city of Florida. I mean, a city in Florida.
Mhm.
Maybe they're not that abide to like people in Seattle. I don't know. I mean, it just is the profile of the people
Mm.
and the density, and as well as the government, how they're going to enforce it. Now, from the lighting perspective, I think this is going to be a big game changer. I think that game changer in a way that I still our company in the lighting, suppliers, supply chain, we consider what we're doing is still what we consider as essential business
Mhm.
because lighting is very important in this crisis time, especially trying to support the infrastructure, the lighting for the hospital, the lighting for transportation, the lighting for safety, the lighting for a lot of these governments, enforcement. So, we got multiple letters from our key clients in United States and requesting us to
Hmm.
continue our supply chain, continue to maintain that qualities, continue to be able to provide a just in time delivery.
Mhm.
So, we, as much as we want to abide to that shelter program, our staff, in China and also in the United States, a lot of them are still working at home, working in some are in the office to maintain that pipeline
Mhm.
because in normal time, of course we have to do it. In a difficult time like what we are getting, there's a big need for us to do what we need to do. So I always say that lighting is an essential part of our life.
Mhm.
And I think that when I say is it going to be a game changer, not on just lighting, but in many, many different aspects of how we could be able to fast track the supply chain in any possible way. And that I'm learning, or our team is learning a lot. How do you fast track? What are your backups? How could you be able to inventorize in a way, always have a factor of how you're going to catch up with these kind of unknown time. A few weeks ago when I saw you, everything was so peaceful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But we all get, taught and learn the fact that life is so fragile And things can change so fast without any one of us to do anything. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
It's crazy. So has this caused you guys as a company to consider potentially manufacturing more in the U.S. or bringing over parts of that you can do here to make your supply chain faster, as you mentioned, or your inventory move quicker?
Well, the supply chain inventory planning is one thing. The backup from China, that whether or not the backup is more inventory or more of the components ready, or to be buying from places other than China. And also, if we need some fast track freight, what are we going to be doing and what kind of cost factor? This are all going to be in our roadmap in the future to tackle, to combat, I call it combat, these kind of unknown factors that nobody can anticipate. Who would guess the virus will cause us this kind of problem? But it will, in a big scale. It's uncontrollable. So trust me, we're learning.
Yeah.
And
So I
one
think
thing
it's,
that, yeah, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, I think it's inevitable that more and more places, in fact, it's about 2:15 Central Time, March 25th right now. The governor of Minnesota is doing a live conference right now. I don't know what he's saying, but I've been told he's going to make us shelter in place starting on Friday, March 27th. So
Yeah.
April 10th is what I've been told. Now, you guys are already in that. You have that order in effect from the 17th until the 31st of March. Is that correct in California?
Yes, as of today.
So
I think it's April, not 31st, but I don't know. I think it's April 7th or something.
So what have you guys done differently in terms of your business? What are you? I know you said you're staggering the shifts a little bit. Is that what it is? People are still coming in, but in shifts, or how are you doing that at McWong?
Well, I have to say that we are in a lucky sector of the business. We're not in the retail, we're not in entertainment, we're not in hospitality, and these are practically closed. Okay. We're lucky that China is still producing. We're lucky that the freight shipping is ongoing. So through the internet and through all these technology, we were able to allow our staff to work at home, still processing paper, still talking with our factory, still talking to our client. We have staff that, our warehouse is still open here because we do have shipment going out. So we are still operating. It's not like you're a restaurant. Nobody come to your place to eat and you just shut down. So this is not shut down, got affected, but our business is moving on because we considered our lighting segment of the business is an essential business. It's a business that, even though the requirement you got to stay home, we do allow our staff to stay home only when it's essentially you need to come back to the office to do certain things. Okay, so our business is ongoing. But we have question, which is very interesting question, is clients, in the early part of February say, well, how am I for sure that the shipment you're coming in are not tinted by virus? Even though you shipped from China for 30 days, they're questioned that, saying that if you don't deliver on time, we're going to penalize you, all these things. And now this is the vice versa problem. We got our shipment shipped, but we don't got pay on time.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
There are many factors. Why is it that we got our shipment came in, but they don't take the delivery because their side of the assembly lines got affected?
So let me ask you about that in terms of you have been an advisor. You're not a politician, but you've been an advisor to politicians. You shared that with me, that you had taken a trip with Governor Schwarzenegger to China. You have the great picture with the thumbs up on your wall. I remember that.
Yeah.
What would you say? We've been talking to other leaders about this in terms of the financial package, $2 trillion almost. That is a lot of money. Like, Canada's GDP is under $2 trillion American dollars. The entire GDP of our country. Okay, so this virus is generating a massive stimulus package, the likes of which has never been seen in the history of the world. Okay, there's nothing like this. This is 5 times bigger than the crisis of 2008, TARP, and all that stuff that happened then. What would you advise? I mean, how would you tell the politicians, I mean, going in? And my question is a little bit longer than that. Actually, it's more convoluted, I think. Going into this crisis, there was a lot of weak lighting companies. Okay. There was a lot of companies that were drained after 10 years of LED and all this sort of stuff. And now this package is going to come out. And how would you advise the politicians to disperse it? Or how would you say, let the strong survive in the business community? Would you say, like, how would you advise them?
Well, you know that I live in the city of Sacramento, and Sacramento is the capital city of state of California.
Okay.
And so there are a lot of, government, politician, lobbyists in this town. So I got the opportunity to know them, meet with them, and especially when we're in the global trade business and all of that. So I'm lucky to be in the city and learn a lot from the government side. Now, today, the $2 trillion economic stimulus plan being approved is amazing. I mean, it's amazing how fast it get approved. It's amazing that this is never unheard of in such a short time that this kind of dollars coming on board. Now, I still do not know the details of this package, but I listened to the radio this morning. They said is number one to help all the unemployment, all the loss of the labor, which is very much needed because there's a lot of people running out of money to pay the bill. So we got to fulfill that. You don't want to have a riots in this country, bang run in this country. And secondly, is supporting all the healthcare systems so that they can save lives. And I think that's very important because otherwise, the fear, I call it this is right now is all about the fear of the people. The fear is going to go viral, it's going to go um, wild.
Fear is a virus too.
There's a virus. And I think there's the biggest virus right now is the fear. The fear for everybody have never came across with this, in a third world war people would bomb you, but this one you don't bomb, you just have to hibernate it. And you're gonna set a wall, so that you just bury yourself rather than go out and bomb somebody. This is all new to everybody, so I think the healthcare system is so important. And thirdly, they were saying the money is going to help all the small business, which is the backbone of the economy. So the small business, including ourselves, and we are suffering, and so they do need help. Otherwise, the whole economy is going to fall apart. And fourthly, which is I heard, is the government system. The system with police, with all of the enforcement, with all of these infrastructure, that has to go on because they can't stay at home. These people need to be out there to help. So I myself think this is a fabulous uh, idea to move forward. I think that in order to at least to get the fear of the people, the fear of the stock market, the fear of the supply chain, the fear of the buyers, this package is basically saying United States, the politicians say, we're there to help, okay? Now, the $1 million question is how are you going to execute that?
Yes.
And I think at least you can have a comfort zone of kind of reduce your fear. But I think that is how you're going to execute it. That's going to be very crucial. They and how is it going to help, and whether or not this really help the bottom line of the economy is all about the execution. And I have been getting multiple phone call, a lot of contact from the government, from the private sectors about bringing me some respirators, some of these masks or gloves, whatever you can get from China. But luckily, because we do know a lot of the producers in China, so we were able to immediately help. in trying to get their supply chain going. This is just the benefit because we do business in China for so long, and you just have a shortage in here. So they have to go through. We know, the UL listed and all these CE product and all that. So we learn a lot from them, and we're helping. So to answer your question, is I think this is good. This is the way to move forward. If I have to advise the politician, it just is. I support that program. You just need to be executed properly.
Do you think this whole effect is going to drastically change the lighting industry in the future, or do you think it's going to kind of go back to normal? Where do you think what's going to happen?
Well,
if you
I'm
could look
glad
ahead?
you asked that question because my staff and I we were talking about we're in the business of sensors and controls and that how you're going to manage the power supply so that you can save energy, you can have ease of life. I think that because of this virus problem, you want to have less touching. Whatever you do, you
Oh,
want to
for
have.
sure. Get rid of light switches everywhere. No
That's a
more
good point.
touching light
That's
switches.
a good point. Something I didn't think about.
Yeah, no.
Right.
Sensors stop the spread of germs for sure.
Right,
For
and I think
sure.
that the data analytical that
Good.
what we're doing is to be able to control the movement through the lighting. Lighting, as I said last time to you, is lighting is a hub. Is a hub that could monitor a lot of things. The
I always say
monitoring,
what I wanted to ask you,
yeah.
my number one question was with IoT, okay, you're
Hmm.
like forget about right now. Right now I have a regular watch
Right,
and an old phone. But
right,
at some time in the near future, maybe 5 or 10 years, this device is going to know my temperature already.
right, yeah, right,
It will
right,
know whether or not I have a fever. It will
right,
know whether or not I've been coughing. It
right,
will know what my health is like right now. And the
right.
watches and all these electronic devices, the IoT, that will be able to be the backbone of a healthy interior environment, in my opinion.
Absolutely, from the
And I think that
wearable,
is the
yeah.
payback.
Hmm.
That is the payback we've been looking for
Right,
from IoT and from this Bluetooth mesh. Is not about so much about energy savings, but it's a message of, hey, you can't come in here unless you've downloaded this app. And we
hmm,
know the IoT will alert us if you have
right,
if your temperature is high, or if you have a fever, or if you've been coughing. You don't have to self-report. We already know. And I
right.
think this health crisis is going to create the kind of laws that allow the distribution of that kind of information and make it possible. And I think that's going to
Absolutely.
be the payback, Margaret.
Absolutely, because I always say the IoT, the wireless, the Bluetooth is gonna be widely adopted because of this situation. But I want to go back that the lighting is always to me is the hub.
Mhm.
Lighting is the hub because everywhere you go, you got to have lighting. Okay.
Mhm.
So I would like to use lighting to be the hub of doing these things to talk to your phone, talk to your wearables, talk to anything that will, not only controlling the light, but also measure your temperature, to be able to tell you the data, tell you how far people, 6 foot apart, whatever, where it's coming, how is it getting, the security side. Yes, the IoT, the wireless, the Bluetooth, the lighting being the hub is going to be the future. So this
There's
will
gonna have to be
emphasize that.
the civil
Mhm.
liberties. See, before this is why I told Greg about a week ago. I said
Mhm.
to him, Greg, this marks an epoch. There's going to be pre-COVID and post-COVID worlds. No,
Yes.
seriously. Like, there's gonna
Mhm.
be pre and post. So 9/11, we had terrorist attacks before 9/11, but then there
Mhm.
was that event and everything after. We had SARS in Toronto in 2003, and we had MERS and Zika virus, and all these things have come out, but there's gonna be pre-COVID and post-COVID world, and I think our civil rights are going to be, I don't know what the right word is. There's gonna have to be a way that they look at this and decide what the correct way to deal with the civil rights issue is. But once they have it, then I think it's open to IoT. I'm getting a little bit of feedback on my end. Are you guys hearing that in the background?
Yeah, a
On
little
that?
bit, but I'm okay now.
A little
Mhm. Hmm.
Yeah, me too. So, yeah, so I think that there's going to be that question, but I think now we force that conversation. And so the government of the United States has to be the leader, and they have to come out and say, this is what you're allowed to know and do with IoT, and this is what you're not allowed.
Hmm.
And once that's done, I think you have the payback that everyone's been looking for, Margaret.
Well, hopefully, the pre and the post, COVID 19 is something that we're looking at. Of course, we're in lighting business, and another aspect that we were talking about is the ultraviolet lights. So how
Mm,
we could be able to utilize the ultraviolet lights to be more in general sense to kill germs, to kill virus, and also the IoT, the sensors, how we're going to be able to sense things, how we're going to be able to use it besides light is to be able to talk with the lighting, the hub is going to be, a lot of that is going to be developing in the future because of this crisis.
Hey, as we were
mhm.
talking, I got the announcement right here on my phone that we are in Minnesota now. Stay at home Friday at midnight through April 10th.
Oh,
Bars and restaurants close till May 1st, and students will learn at home until May 4th. Just like
wow.
that. 20 minutes, man.
Wow. Wow. So it's now law, huh?
I got
It's
some
May
planning to
4th.
do.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
for sure.
Well, I was planning to go to Hawaii on May 19, but I think that now Hawaii says it's 14 days, you know, uh, uh, you, uh, you have to be 14 days
Mhm.
quarantine.
Down.
Quarantine.
Wow.
So even in the United States, you still have to quarantine. Hawaii is part of the United States.
Sure. Let me ask you something. So you're a Chinese American. You're an American citizen. How do we like how do we keep cooler heads prevailing here in the relationship between the United States and China? And how do they now? I mean, we're all lighting people. I'm asking you, but I'm just I asked Elysion the same question yesterday. Um, as another Chinese American, how do we keep the conversation to one that's appropriate and honest and fair about this situation? What is your advice?
Well, I always use the word that um, we got to start eliminate this no border. We got to have no border means that there's certain thing that you can't say because you're Chinese or you're Americans or you are German. When you get into this issue, like the virus issue,
Hmm.
is a world issue. There's
Hmm.
no border, meaning that are these virus coming from China or China is should be penalized for bringing the virus here or what? I think this is something that, the whole world need to understand. Nobody wanted to have this happen. It's not like the World War that somebody going to shoot somebody.
Hmm.
It's just that this is happened. Is nobody fought. Nobody wanted to have this happen. You look at Italy, so sad.
Hmm.
And I would say the first thing is, you can talk about politics, you can talk about trade, but when you get in a virus situation, is to me is borderless. Means that everybody have to take care of each other, and instead of pointing fingers at each other, it is so funny that funny is not the right word. It just I couldn't believe that 2 months ago Chinese was fighting to get all kinds of masks from United States, all kinds of respirator, everything they can get from United States to ship it to China, so that they can save some lives in China. And then 2 months later, or maybe a few weeks later, it's the opposite.
Hmm.
And it's the opposite. We here in the United States is fighting to get as much supplies as possible from Korea, from China, and shipping it back. Some of these product was bought in US, ship it to China, but they because there's more supply now, they ship it back to the United States.
Hmm.
So this really tell us that it doesn't matter which country that you are in. It is when we need each other, we just help to help each other. And this virus is really doesn't matter whether you are black or you're white or you're Asian, whether or not you're rich, you're poor. It's just putting us together.
It's not just viruses that are unaware of imaginary lines that humans draw on maps. Those are imaginary lines, right? Like along the 49th parallel between Canada and the United States, the animals, the water, the air, and the viruses, they don't know that there's a line there, actually.
Right,
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's something that humans have to realize, that we have created these metaphysical structures in a sense, and that while we can trade based on these structures, other things in the world are not aware of them, and viruses are one of those things that don't care and are not aware of borders. And there's no way, I don't think there's a way to avoid it. I mean, America and China are kind of married to one another now in some bizarre way that they can't decouple. They can't decouple from one another.
Right. Well, I agree. And I think it's just that how you want to be able to take care of the guidelines, the rules, and, we all have to abide to. I'm sure that there are over time, that people, would think differently and so on. But I just see that there's a calling that God is, having this virus is to be able to tell each other that we need to work with each other. That's how I see it.
I agree with that. Margaret Wong, McWong International, thank you for being a guest on the Get a Grip on Lending podcast.
Thank you. And thank you. I appreciate it. And I am really very enthused that when you guys call me, you guys are always on the grip. You guys are on the grip with the lighting, on the grip with the updated news. It's just very, very, very nice to talk to you again. Thank you so much.
It's our pleasure. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Yeah, for sure. If you're out there listening to this, don't forget about where it all started, the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. Go to naild.org. And hey, while you're on the internet, you can check out McWong International as well. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.